Hello again, Strict Club Diablo Force Open Beta Tester almost here, and I'm ready with making some pre-launch Theorycrafted semi-builds that should be good for fresh-into-endgame characters when the game actually launches. Not that great for the beta because I'm gonna explain in a moment why. I also plan to evolve those setups into full builds when I have more information when the game launches, such as socketing, such as item stats in rows, such as amounts of sockets per slot, such as the paragon trees, and many things, even ascended gear and so on. Um, so keep in mind, there will be updates and evolutions of those builds if I can handle it, depending on many things. This is one such build for the Necromancer class called Hemomancer, and as the name suggests, it's a blood necro. The beta test will only let us reach level 25 and only let us play in the first act / zone called Fractured Peaks. So those builds won't be as useful as they would be to a character post-launch around level 50-60 because of many things from those builds you won't be able to get in the beta, and you only have 25 skill points, or even 24 most likely. So I've used up around 63, 64, 65 skill points because people told me there will be under 65 skill points, at least in the open beta, that in the closed beta that they tested there were that many. So if we have more than that, if we have around 70 skill points or more on the way to 100, then this build can be expanded. I think wooded passives and actives in the spreadsheets that you're seeing on the screen during that video. I've included options to expand the build if we get more skill points. I've made two types of spreadsheets. The one collection of spreadsheets is for those builds, the things that I've used to make those videos. The other spreadsheet I've got is something that I've used to make the first collection. It's like my version of mini build calculator for the skill trees, my way of how I was calculating how many skill points and spent. So something that has the full skill trees for every class with all the active and passive skills. So if you like those, they're in the description, the links to those, you can check them out. Now, enough of that. Let's move on to the main thing, the build. I hope you enjoyed. Buckle up and let's go. The way I want to start it is to start from the bottom, from the capstone, which I call specialization because I don't know exactly what the game calls it. But that one passive that is a 1 point, pick one out of a few. And I decided to take Ratma's Vigor because for a blood necro, I think it fits the most. Increase your maximum life by 10% while you're healthy, which means you have more than 80% HP. You deal 25% multiplicative increased damage. So that means you have to keep yourself healthy while playing this setup. You have to make sure your HP doesn't go below 80%, so you can benefit from all of this. Another thing that I want to talk about before I move on to the rest of the skills is the Book of the Dead, which is a Necromancer only mechanic. You have 3 types of minions, Skeletal Warriors, Skeletal Mages, and Golems, and each of them has 3 types, such as Bone, Blood, Iron Golem, Shadow Mage, Skull Mages, and so on. And each subtype of unit has 2 upgrades or a sacrifice. If you sacrifice it, you get passive bonuses. Otherwise, you have to pick one of the 2 upgrades for it. What I did recommend for this is to use Skeletal Skirmisher Sacrifice for crit chance, Cold Mage's Sacrifice, since we have plenty of ways to apply Vulnerable, and this gives us multiplicative increased damage to vulnerable enemies. This is the 5% increased crit strike chance, and a Blood Golem. A Blood Golem with, as you can see here, I've written upgrade 1. Why? Well, it absorbs 15% of the damage we would take, again, helping keep us healthy. Alternatively, you can go for extra damage and sacrifice Iron Golem to get 30% increased multiplicative increased crit strike damage. I think this would be nice. The Blood Golem also heals himself as they attack, with drain life, so hopefully it survives enough. Now moving on to ultimate skills, Blood Wave, the one and only blood related ultimate. So this damage knocks enemies back, and it swows enemies for 4 seconds, for 50% for 4 seconds, and then leaves behind 3 blood orbs, which we're building around blood orbs with this setup one way or another. Standalone damage reduction, you get damage reduction, but for each active minion it is reduced. And since we have only one minion, that means it's only reduced once, which is fine. The more minions you take, the less convenient and useful this is. I've only put 1 point into it, but I put 3 points into the next one, Memento Mori. Sacrificing both skeletal warriors and skeletal mages increases their sacrifice bonuses by 20%. If it's 20% per point, that's a whopping 60%. If this is 10% per point, it will be 30%. We'll see how it is. We will see. I'm not sure. I don't trust those numbers until I see them for myself. There's a bunch of other things that you might consider investing into here. But again, we only have limited skill points, so I went for other stuff. Corpse Tendrils, very useful for this setup. Helps with stunning the enemies and deals damage. It's a 3-second stun, which is a hefty amount of stun. And enemies who are in range of Corpse Tendrils are swowed by 50% before being pulled in, so it pulls them in, a sucky skill. Here, and then it swows them and stuns them. Enemies slain while stunned by Corpse Tendrils have chance to drop a Blood Orb. Again, we're building around Blood Orbs, so you better kill them before this expires while they're still affected by Corpse Tendrils. Now, Blood begets blood. While below 50% life, you receive 10% more healing from all sources, so very good to help you get back to those healthy looking HP bars. Your blood skills do increase damage. We didn't take that, but it's interesting because it's doubled while you're healthy. But overpower damage, I'm not sure how much overpower we can get. Rather than Blood Orbs heal you 15% more, 3 points in there, I think this is lovely. Hitting enemies with blood skills has a chance to fortify you. Instead of that, I took Blood Orbs heal your minions, so that our minion could stay alive for longer and our minion could keep soaking up damage that was meant for us, 15% of it. So other things you can invest into, obviously Thorns, we don't need it unless you really want it. Iron Maiden, nice curse, nice good curse. So afflicted enemies take damage each time they deal direct damage. But that's not the main reason why we took it. Sure, that's good. This is good. No longer costs essence, instead gain essence for each enemy cursed. Does not work with enemies already afflicted with that curse. And then heal for 5% of your maximum life when an enemy dies while afflicted with Iron Maiden. Again, very good to keep us in those healthy numbers. There's 3 passives here, good ones, good worth investing into, but again, limited points, so I didn't take them. Blood Mist, our macabre skill, disperse into Bloody Mist, becoming immune, which means you take no damage from all sources for 3 seconds. Then your movement speed is reduced by 50% and you periodically deal damage to enemies, healing for 100% of the damage dealt. Again, if shit hits the fan, boom, Blood Mist, get yourself back to healthy. Enhanced Blood Mist. Blood Mist's movement speed penalty is reduced to 20%, so from 50% less movement speed to 20% less movement speed. Then Blood Mist leaves behind a corpse every 1 second. You see why I took that instead of the Fortify in a moment. I also take Macabre. You might be wondering why I took second Macabre skill. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, this is only if you want that second one. Only if you want it. So there's 2 things you can do. First of all, you can decide to not take this. And that's a good idea. Not taking corruption is not bad. You're sacrificing some way to heal yourself, but you're getting another survivability skill, Bone Prison, an Earth Prison of Bone, with X life that surrounds the target area for 6 seconds. You gain 3 essence each time an enemy hits that bone prison. So if you keep the enemies inside bone prison, they will try to hit it to exit. And enemies inside the prison can either become vulnerable or you can fortify for each enemy trapped in bone prison. And that's 7 points we can take either from here or here, if we want to fit enough skills on our skill bar. So you have to sacrifice. Do I sacrifice the Iron Maiden or any other corruption skill, or do I go for sacrificing Bone Prison? And that's why I mentioned there's some options here. So let's keep that, for example, as blue. And I'll leave that as zeros under I'll leave that as 0 under Iron Maiden. So I'll leave that 0, and you have those 7 points, and I'll show you where I would put them. Now we're at 57, so let's say we have 6 points. So Bone Prison, I think I would rather go Bone Prison and Blood Mist. I think it's better synergy for this setup. So Grim Harvest, consuming a corpse generates essence. This synergizes well with this leaving behind corpse every 1 second. And it also synergizes with you deal multiplicative damage increased for 4 seconds after consuming a corpse. I only put 1 point here, but I put 3 points here. If you need more essence, you can put more points here. When a corpse is formed from your skills or your minions, 45 for 1. This is only good if you really suffer from survivability, which in theory you shouldn't with this setup. Your damage has up to 4% chance to cause a corpse at the target location. Boom, 3 points here, we're at 60. Your core skills cost more essence. I don't need this, but maximum essence increased. If you need it, put the points. If you don't need it, you can take those 3 points, put them elsewhere. Blood Search, 5 points here, 1 point here, 1 point here. Very interesting, nice Blood Nova. Yeah, it's increased per enemy drained up to 50%. It heals you per each enemy drained up to 5% of your maximum life. And each time an enemy is hit by Blood Search Nova, you're fortified. I prefer this over that one for the overpower. Hemorrhage, chance to form Blood Orb. And the Blood Orbs heal you for 50% of your max life when picked up, but we've boosted them with passives. Then after picking a Blood Orb, your next Hemorrhage also hits nearby enemies and grants 2 additional essence per enemy hit, and Hemorrhage generates an additional 20% attack speed while healthy. And this build relies on being healthy, but I decided to take this Fortify for survivability. If you don't think you need the Fortify, this is a good idea. So now, those extra 3 points I've got here, where would you want to put them? Well, this one doesn't work. This one could work outside of melee range enemies. This one could also work. But maybe you could put them into the minion. So it's got extra life or it's got extra resistance. One of those two is what I would suggest. Personally, I would probably do it something like that, because the minion drains and heals himself. And now we have 63 points. If that's the limit, we are sorted. Legendary aspects, legendary powers, what are they, how do they work? Hopefully I can explain it quickly to you. When you kill enemies, when you loot anything that's lootable, if it drops, that drop has a chance to be a legendary item, and every legendary item has a legendary aspect on them. Legendary aspects are kind of like special affixes in multiple ways. First of all, they're strong, they're kind of built around me affixes. Second, you can take it from one item, put it on another, as long as it's within one of the 5 categories: defensive, offensive, mobility, utility, or resource. You can see on the spreadsheet on the screen each category what item slots fall under it. Some items can go on multiple, some item slots can have multiple types of categories under them, while pens, for example, only have defensive, weapons and offhands only have offensive, while others have at least 2 on them. But there's multiple defensive. You don't have to put defensive only on the pens. There's helm, chest, and so on. So hope this is clear. Now there's another thing worth mentioning about them. You can get aspects from dungeons. So if you're getting super unlucky, you can get that specific aspect. Let's say the blood baited, and then you go to Fractured Peaks. You go to Hoarfrost Demise. You finish the final boss of Hoarfrost Demise. And what happens from that moment is on a user interface code Codex of Power, you will have a permanent entry of bot-baited aspect. And you can go to the NPC that allows you to transfer aspects from one item to the other. And instead of using an item as the source, you use the Codex. But there's a twist here. There's the catch. The catch is that it will always be the bare minimum row. So if X here is 5, and this one goes up to like 10 or 15, you will always get the 5. For example, this one is always 5 if you take it from the Codex, but it can go higher than 5 or lower than 5 probably in this case. Then there's this one, 0.5 seconds. You always get the 0.5 seconds, even if this one goes to 1.5, 2 seconds or whatever. So hopefully this is clear. Now that this is clear, we're moving on to telling you which one I picked on which slot. I'm first gonna tell you which one goes in each slot and then talk about them a little bit in detail. Potent boot, helmet, fast boot, chest, pummeling, gloves, might, pants, grasping veins, boots, shared misery amulet, umbro, ring 1, ring 2 is bursting bones, a one-handed weapon retribution, offhand, blood-baited aspect. If you go for two-handed, then use retribution and you have to either sacrifice blood-baited aspect or move things around to accommodate blood-baited aspect. There are ways to do it. For example, you can put blood-baited maybe here and then move shared misery, but keep in mind the amulet gives you 50% effectiveness, so whatever you put in the amulet, make sure you put the one you want 50% effectiveness on it. The shared misery can go either here or here, and you can sacrifice one of those two, or you can even put it there and sacrifice this one or sacrifice this one. There's ways to move things around. I'm not gonna go through all the ways because there's too many. Now let's go one by one, starting with Potent Boot and then Umbro. Potent Boot, while at life, full life, Blood Orbs grant X Essence. Umbro, one of my favorite ones in the game, restore resource when you crowd control an enemy. And this synergizes very well, it brings us to the utility Shared Misery. So when you hit a crowd controlled enemy, 30% chance that, or more, that crowd control effect spreads to another unaffected nearby enemy. And this will help with proccing this one more often. Other utilities we took were Grasping Veins and Fastboot, which are Necromancer specific. Keep in mind, I've only shortlisted the ones I believe work well with this build. I've shortlisted 22, and out of those 22, I picked like 10 for the build, but there's a lot more that you can use. But I try to include enough to give you options. If you don't like one of the ones I picked as best in SWAT, I gave you options for things that I believe are synergies. So back to utility, there's plenty of utility that I've shortlisted, but I'm going to talk about the ones here. Fastboot and Grasping Veins. Fastboot, Blood Orbs reduce your ultimate cooldown. No need to tell you why I think this is a good synergy for the build. We have plenty of orbs. And then Grasping Veins. Enemies who are stunned by corpse tendrils are also made vulnerable for its duration. If they die while stunned, they have 15% chance to spawn a blood orb. And this again helps you keep vulnerable upon enemies, and it helps with the blood orbs. Aspect of Might is the one I took. One of probably the very good sturdy aspects. Basic skills grant you 25% additive damage reduction for X seconds. Solid, and Necrus themselves, they don't have much, if any, defensive ones as class specific, so we're using some general ones. This one is also nice if you apply bleeding or other damage over time, but I think this one is better because it's 25% straight up, and it works nicely. I didn't take a mobility one, I decided to go for an extra utility. And then Pummeling and Retribution, let's talk about those quickly. Pummeling and Retribution, we will be stunning enemies with corpse tendrils, for example. So, and it also synergizes with Torturous Aspect and Aspect of Grasping Veins, which again, enemies afflicted by Iron Maiden, this is only if you take it, and obviously with this one. So that's additive damage to stunned 30%, that's multiplicative damage 40 to 50 to stunned, knockdown, frozen. This also gives you chance to stun distant enemies when they hit you. another further synergy. And those damages will add up, and it will be great, especially considering we apply vulnerable, that damage also adds up. So I put pummeling in the gloves, but I put retribution, which is the one with the additive damage, as a two-handed weapon suggestion. If you go two-handed, that means it will have 100% effectiveness. But I otherwise put it here. So we can take wood baited aspect, which brings us to wood baited. The bird search nova echoes again after a short delay, dealing percent less damage, and this percent probably goes lower if you get lucky with a good roll. Then bursting bones. When a segment of bone prison is destroyed or expired, it deals, I think it should say it deals, probably miswrote it, X damage in an area around itself, which is pretty cool. So obviously, if you take Iron Maiden, you don't take this. If you take Bone Prison, you don't take that. Hopefully, this is clear. And I suggest taking Bone Prison over Iron Maiden myself, personally. Okay, now that this is sorted, I think everything is clear. If you have any questions, ask them in the comments section. To get notified when I upload more content like this one or other builds and guides for Wooter and not so Wooter games, you can subscribe to my channel and hit that bell button to not miss out on notifications. As well as keep in mind there's something called memberships on YouTube, which lets you be a paying member for my channel to get access to perks such as emotes and badges made by me, as well as the option to get one-on-one tutoring for the very basics of Adobe Photoshop, Premiere and After Effects. And memberships can be cancelled at any time if you no longer want to be a member. Thanks for watching all the way until the end. Struck up, keep it cool until next time, and goodbye.